Teachers, and you're listening to Show X Live with Ken in a student accommodation all the way in Scotland, and Wade in his white windowless van? Uh-oh, I better get out of here. Enjoy the show!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Show X on VTWProductions.com. You're listening live at 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. GMT on this Sunday, the 31st of May, 2015. Welcome, everybody, to the show. We are joined, as always, or usually, or sometimes, by our good friend Ken from the Scottish lands. How are you doing today, sir?
In the past 4 weeks is exactly 50% now, so I would like to go by that statistic. Thank you very much. I am very well. I'm very happy to be back. I'm glad life has calmed down just enough that I can do the show again. So I'm very happy to be back.
Well, we are very happy to have you back. We also would like to welcome to the show today, on a very special show, a good friend, Jon Wasik. How are you doing today, sir?
Fantastic.
Outstanding. So I'm going to kick things off right away with a little bit of
dysfunctional deviations.
And then this week's dysfunctional deviations. Well, say things out. It's kind of a special show because today, Show X is 200. That's right, everybody. Woo! We have done 200 live episodes for everyone out there. How do you feel about that? And I think, we're up to about 60 of those, or just under, have been video since we transitioned over to doing the video show. Wow. So, hey, everybody. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and continue to check us out. Would like to also jump things right out and say that because it's actually a very full show already going into things, because we have all kinds of lovely people joining us in the video wall. If you haven't been out and hung out with us live for some time, you should join us at the video wall. It's a Google Hangout that we have set up for each week. I've updated the main page at VTWProductions.com. If you go up to the top there on the banner and it says Video Wall, click on the link there, jump in with your Google Plus account, and you can join us in the video wall. We probably have more ladies listening and watching than I think we can have claimed in I don't know how many months and stuff that we've had. Miss Kopi and Chibi are both listening from the Great North, as well as Miss Pusa, although not on the video wall right now, is joined us again from out in Danish land. Holy cow. Welcome back, Pusa. It is so good to know that you're alive and not just on like the random little bits of stalking that we normally got. We've missed it. We haven't had any good emails that we've had to question what we're opening from the subject line for quite some time. It's been a while, and we kind of missed that, Pusa, so it's great. So happy to know that both Spawn and Respawn are doing wonderful. And it's just wonderful to have you back on the show with us. Also, if you're listening live, you can jump into the IRC and join us to chat with us. If you also go to the front page, there will be a link up there for chatting. Jump into the IRC. Take whatever favorite chat client you have and jump into irc.quakenet.org and go into the pound VTW channel. And you can join and chat with us live on the show. Especially important, because we have a guest that is going to be taking questions from you today as we pick his brain on all the wonderful things of what it is to be an author. That's right, Jon is here because he has written a book. And I say here, he just ran off camera because he also hasn't eaten today, and so we ordered pizza, and so now he's got to go get foods and stuff, so that may be happening during the show, just in case people are curious. If you also are listening but have not checked us out to watch us, you should go over to the Versus the World video page on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search for VTW Productions, find the Versus the World video page, click on it, and you can check out each live event as well as all of our past video episodes. So please jump in and check them out. I think that's everything. Oh, the last one is, hey, if you have questions for us, for our guest Jon or anyone else, feel free to email into the show at showx@vtwproductions.com. We check that during the show and are happy to read out what everyone's been up to, their geek cred, things like that, and what's been going on all around the interwebs. What else do I have? Last one. If you haven't jumped into our gaming nights, as we normally throw after the show, please come check us out, hang out, not just on our Sundays, but anytime. You can jump into the TeamSpeak that VTW runs. It is our VTW TeamSpeak channel. All the information's at the front page. The top left, just under the live links, you'll catch the TeamSpeak IP, which is vtw.typefrag.com. Thank you very much, Typefrag, for giving us our access and giving us our own channel that we can run. Just jump into there. You'll jump in as a guest on TeamSpeak and chat with everyone else gaming and having fun. I think that's it. All right. So with that, we're in Dysfunctional Deviations. We're going to kick things off right away. So John, how are you doing?
Good.
So, the reason I have on is John's someone I know from outside the realms of gaming and things like that. And in doing so, I had the opportunity to talk about the project you were working on, which is a book you've written.
Yes.
And when we first started talking about the book, it was great because go figure, I kind of present myself as a bit of a geek everywhere.
Just a little.
And so I think you kind of caught that, or figured it out real quickly, like, oh, here's someone who might be interested in what you've been working on.
Oh, the cosplay pictures I saw of you were a big hint.
Like I said, myself trying to be out there in various ways, so yeah, go figure.
Yeah.
But with that, you approached me about a book you've written that is called The Sword of Dragons.
Yeah.
And I have it on the video for everyone to see. You can check out the cover of the book here, which I will say...
That's the Sword of Dragons, by the way, not the Sorta Dragons, which is what I heard there. Like, not the kind of dragons.
Sword.
The S word.
Yes.
Yes, the silent ward. The Sword of Dragons. And, which Go Figures has something to do with, I don't know, a sword and perhaps dragons. So, with this book, this is your first published book?
Yes.
But not the first thing you've written.
Correct. Oh, I've been writing for 20 years, more than 20 years now, ever since I was a little kid in 5th grade.
Wow. So you have quite some history with just writing in general. So where did you go or what were you writing before you published your first book? What kind of things started you in writing?
Well, the first big thing I did was a fan fiction for Star Trek, so science fiction, big nerd, yeah.
Hey, nice.
Now, I don't know, John. You say fanfic for Star Trek, and there's a certain kind of thing, me being an anime buff, that when you hear fanfic, it kind of lets you think right away, like, So what kind of things did you focus on in the fic that you wrote for Star Trek?
It was an actual series. It was called, go figure, Star Trek Dragon. I got a thing for dragons. The website's still up too, but it was a series following a crew on a ship that actually ended up getting stranded for a little while in another galaxy and then coming back and trying to fit in. And, it was just a 7-season series.
Oh, wow. 7 seasons. That's pretty good. So how many overall things did you write for? Or was it kind of done by page or by... I take it with a web series, like episodes, essentially. Is correct? So how many episodes did that end up with?
The standard usually ended up becoming about 9 episodes per season. The first couple were a little hairy-carry, I guess you could say, on how I decided what to do. So, but 9 episodes of short stories. They were short stories.
Okay, very cool. Well, and that's the thing. I know a lot of our fans are very talented and like doing a ton of geeky things. And so it's not anything outside of our normal realm of how we hang out to hear someone writing fiction online for something they love in a universe. Now, when you wrote the... See, I don't want to focus completely on that because we do have to talk about the book you have out.
That's good.
But I am curious, kind of like with the fanfic you wrote, did you come up with your own characters throughout, your own crew, your own ship, stuff like that? Or did you really reference stuff that already existed?
I started out exclusively just doing my own stuff. A little bit of references here and there. I did one episode that featured Voyager and, kind of put it in there just because I'm a Star Trek fan. I love that kind of stuff. But once they kind of got pushed off to the other galaxy, there was no putting in any of the...
Yeah, it's hard to like follow on that unless you want to completely change your universe to saying, wait, we chased after Voyager?
Yeah,
I don't want to do that.
No, it wasn't, totally outside there. But yeah, it was fun.
Oh, very cool. There we go. Come on, stay with us, video feed. I don't know what's going on with that. I wonder if I'm not maxing out the bandwidths that I have available, which could be a thing.
There we go. Stream
stuff. At least the audio is still going solid.
Speaking from my 240 meg down and 40 meg up internets that I have at the moment.
That you're stealing from the school and are not yours at all, you bastard.
Hey, I work here. I earn this.
Something to that effect. Let's see if I can adjust my buffer and streaming amount to a little less to see if that keeps it from freaking out.
Alrighty.
Lessen the quality just a little bit for everyone. Try to keep it under a cap that makes it happy. Hopefully that'll work. So yeah, that happened.
Oh.
Yeah, bad OBS. Anyhow, as we were talking about that, we went from Star Trek fanfic to what kind of progressed you next on your path of authorship as we go our way towards Sword of Dragons?
Well, the idea for Sword of the Dragons was actually originally a sci-fi that I had been playing with since I was in about junior high. And it just kind of morphed into a fantasy with one name and kept morphing and morphing until the product that you see before you started about 2006.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know. It was a weird sci-fi idea I had with a little bit of magic stuff in it. And I'm like, no, this will make a better fantasy.
Well, I was going to say, because from what I've read of the book, sci-fi doesn't come into it from what I see. It definitely feels like very much a fantasy book.
Yeah, that's good. I was hoping that would be the case.
Well, it's just kind of my initial thing, like, wait, this started out as a sci-fi.
Yeah.
I missed the spaceships in this one. No.
No.
So, very cool. Now, this book, for everyone who doesn't know, is available today. It's out on multiple channels. In fact, I have links that will be in the show notes for it. But it's available everywhere from the Kindle store to Barnes & Noble and the Nook, Amazon.com. You can check it out. Just right there is both paperback and the Kindle link. And so there'll be links there that you can check it out. But for me, I was very fortunate because when you brought it by, and everybody, I will say, full disclosure, the copy I have, which is, essentially is a pre-release, so it was one of the ones that you had set up before coming out, that you gave me because we had talked enough and kind of just, you were interested to see how I responded to it, what I felt about the book. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, I just finished it this morning. And it was one of those things where I tried to read it. I was try to finish it last week when I was in Canada, but go figure, I was too busy in Canada. So I've been reading it throughout, and last night I was up a little late, reading it, enjoying it, because of course getting towards the end, the kind of climax, everything occurring. And then this morning was like, I want to finish this before I have John on. I need to be able to, speak to the entire book without spoiling any of it. Yeah.
Important.
So I gotta say, even though you got a free copy, Mr. Wayne, the price is pretty damn good. It's $14 right now on Amazon from what I'm seeing. So considering I'm across the pond and I can get it with free delivery if I spend a little bit more on a couple other things, that's pretty damn good. That's a good price. That's even for you people over across the pond. That's pretty good. So very nice.
As well as the digital version, I think, is $2.99.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken. So
wow,
anyone that
nice.
has a device that they want to read it themselves, you can get it very inexpensively, digital format, and very reasonable for a nice, easy-to-read paperback.
Plus, if you get the paperback on Amazon, you can get the Kindle edition for 99 cents.
Oh! So even there, you can get it both ways. So keep that in mind, everyone. So... Since you're the author, I'm going to let...
I'll be right back. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. We'll be back in approximately 2 minutes. We'll probably come in... Let's just say we'll go in with the music breaks while we set things up for sure. So
I'll
be
start
prepared.
playing this. I'll start playing a song, and we can...
We'll start playing a song and we'll go in with that. IRC, tell me if everything breaks or not, okay? And also... Show X got saved by Ken today. We are officially in backwards land, says Lena in
Oh, God. I'll never hear the end of this. All right, stop. Get out of there.
Hey,
it's my turn.
I'll stop in a second. 5 minutes.
They don't hear me. Go. No,
5
stop.
minutes, and I downloaded Sam and got on air. Boom. Okay, here we go. We'll be back in a second. You listen to showxlbtproductions.com. All right, takes. Jeez. Can't believe I didn't call that. I got that working. Jeez.
Shush.
By the way, who is Lena Inverse?
That's copy.
Oh.
listening to Show X on btwproductions.com.
Hey everybody, look at that. We are back officially and on everything it looks like. So, Hi! Comcast finally fixed the interwebs fast. I'm actually a little surprised with that. As granted, I did call into the rep and was like, scathingly, really? Of all the times you're going to break my interwebs, you're going to do it during my live broadcast of my show?
Oh man, it was an epic one listening to him tear them apart.
Good,
No,
they
I was-
deserve it because what's the percentage rate they're supposed to have? It's like 99.5% up.
99.99.
I have no idea. Whatever it is, it's not accurate.
Yeah.
Oh. So, much hate, rage, and things like that. But we are back! And
With
the
a
show
vengeance.
is live again. And I did at least check with the business class internet guy and said, because he's like, is there anything else I can help you with? I was like, other than the miracle of getting my webs back, can you tell me when or if Comcast is ever going to bring fiber out to my area so I can have the 2 gigabit per second up and down that supposedly they're bringing around? He's like, oh, yeah. We only do that with a lot of people. I was like, you guys suck. Anyhow. So, as we get back into things, and before we start things back up with John talking about the book, we were just getting into like the premise and the plot and everything for what Sword of Dragons is about. And I apologize to his family and friends who have also tuned in to listen, who are struggling. Hopefully you can tell them that we're back up and alive.
Yes.
But-
Facebook knows.
So, thank goodness. So what I would like to do real quick is get into a little bit of geek cred for those who've written into the show. Even though I know that people are saying, haha, things have broken and failed and you can delete stuff, I'm still going to read emails. And so to help get us back on track, I'll let you read the first one, Ken. Do you have your emails up?
I've read the emails, I'll have you know. They've actually technically been read.
To
did
everyone
the-
online?
I did Agris SWs. And
Okay,
I
good.
did Poosers. We
So-
said them all.
What did you?
Well,
Well,
they,
see,
they
this-
weren't questions, they were just general. One of them just said, mock.
Yes,
mock,
I just
like
read
1,000 times,
Paus's
so.
contribution to the show.
Oh no,
mocking
people
me.
who asked me to delete them. No. We're saved for forever now. They're there for the rest of eternity.
It's
in our
officially
inbox.
out there. So,
Yeah.
and now this will be interesting because what we'll have to do is take every version of what was happening that was getting recorded and put it together. So I'll have to get what Ken recorded for a minute and have him email it to me, and I'll have to go into Audacity and kind of mash it all together to get one contiguous show. And
It's just
so
me mocking you for about 10 minutes. It's really not worth listening to again.
I don't know. That
but
sounds
I
interesting.
haven't heard it all. I got enough to
Yeah.
get on the phone real quick and just gotta say, hey, at least he is live. So I will give you credit, Ken. So good job getting Sam set up quickly enough
Hey,
to get
that
things
was
back
like
running.
5 minutes. I did that. I am so impressed with myself. But anyway, let's get back to the freaking show.
Okay, so
Oh,
you already
jeez.
did the inbox, so you already caught up on that. So, well, I had to make sure, essentially, since I saw one in here from Pusa, and so I wanted to make sure we didn't, not get to that one because
I actually didn't even read out the subject or even read it. I just refused to. I don't know what it says. I refuse
What?
to read it.
the subject wasn't that bad.
Read out then. I'm not going to look at it.
Our chicks have hot, juicy legs. They want you to lick them. That is a very Pusa title.
Poosser.
We appreciate it. Like I said, it is great to have Pusa back. Anyhow, so with that, we are going to get back into our interview with Mr. Wasik here, as we're going to talk about the Sword of Dragons.
Sweet.
So, trying to remember where it was we caught before hopefully the interwebs explode themselves again. And Ken, please feel free to participate in the questioning, in the Inquisition. But absolutely. So, we were talking about the premise of Sword of Dragons, and essentially what you were just getting into talking about the overall world that you've created with it. So please feel free to pick up and tell us a little bit about the basis of Sword of Dragons.
The basis?
Yes.
So, okay. Well, I was going through telling the story about how the rogue mage was using the sword to incite civil war, and ends up that a fledgling wizard and an outcast warrior are the only ones who really can kind of stop her. And that's kind of because of how things are set up. You've got this wizard's guild that thinks it's better than everyone else and is kind of outside of everything, and then you've got the warriors guild who are still on this world and are all about honor and battle and protecting everyone, especially their own kingdom and their own little selves. They kind of lost their way. And that's why the main character, protagonist, Cardin Kater, is how you would pronounce it.
Yes, we have lots of discussions at work and such about how names are pronounced, because I'm one of the notorious readers that, unless I'm reading something out loud to people, I absolutely just kind of gloss over the names in my head where I see the way it's spelled. I'm like, okay, I know who that is.
Yeah.
And I don't take the time to stop and say, okay, when the rogue mage Kylar, things like that, where I'm like, maybe. And the fledgling wizard Kalar and Dallin. And so it's things like that. And we jokingly had said, like, John, you found it very interesting when you talked to a few of us about, how do you pronounce that? And kind of listening to how we would say it.
Yeah.
And how you were entertained by that.
Yeah, well, and I had my own experiences with that. Like, I was a big Star Wars buff. Well, still am, but reading Star Wars books as a kid before the prequel trilogy. Yes. Coruscant. That's how I pronounced it. It's like, it's Coruscant. Oh.
That, you see, and it's one of those interesting things, I ran into that, or I often run into that with my cousin, who I'm going to give the book to next because he will destroy it. He goes through super fast. Because we'll both read very much the same books. I have like the entire Wheel of Time series.
Oh, nice.
And that was one of the first ones that together we were reading, where I had started, and I told him, dude, you probably like this, check it out. And I had gotten through probably book 5 or 6 by the time he picked it up. Mm-hmm. And he rapidly caught up to me, where I was just like, darn it! But when we were pretty amped about the series, and so we started talking about it, and it was interesting because until we would say the characters' names or something, he would say a character name, I'd just be like, wait, who? And kind of have to describe. Well, it would just, he'd have to describe like who it was he was talking about before I said, oh, you mean this guy? Okay, because in my head, I said it like this, and so it is kind of entertaining, just that whole idea that, it's a rare opportunity that I have a chance to talk to the author himself, who has come up with the names, and to know what you voiced everything as, or how you said it. Because the other one for me, and I think it was very straightforward, but it's the world itself, which is Hellerite?
Hellerite, yeah.
Hellerite.
Very close.
Okay, and that's where, I read it, and that one seemed to kind of be even keel for me, where I was like, okay, I got that. But names are always so much, and admittedly, because your characters, all their names have essentially that same CK kind of beginning, between Kalar, Kalar, Cardin, and Colin? Oh, gosh.
Clarlin?
Clarlindar?
Clarlin?
The main villain, or whatever, from the past?
Yes, Clarlin.
Yeah, exactly. See? Carlin. What he said.
Yes.
Literally.
It's because all cool people start with K at the start of the name, you see, so that's why.
Well, it was interesting to me that I caught that a lot of the characters, it's not all the characters, but some of the primary characters all had that.
And there's actually a reasoning behind that. I don't know how much you noticed of that in the book, but especially Cardin and Kalar, kind of tried to make them to where they're very similar people, similar goals. They just go about it doing it very different ways, and so that was intentional.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But it's funny, the whole naming convention thing, because for me, having not, I struggle personally being creative, and where I can do a show and stuff where it's mostly just having a conversation, talking. I'm not having to come up with really anything other than my opinion on how the world works, but I'm not creating something new, some new IP, some new world, some new system of the way things work, much like you do in your book. Mm-hmm. And so for me, the creativity has always been a challenge, because I can create something I already know. Even the 3D print stuff we were kind of looking at around, these are based on what other people have done and stuff like that, and I can model or do stuff, but to actually just create from nothing, for me, is a big challenge. And so even when because the only chance I ever have when I come up with character creation is gaming. And it harkens all the way back to the tabletop D&D type games, where you'd have to come up with a character and find a backstory and kind of do this whole creation to understand why this was an important person in the world and who you're going to play and kind of their influences and all that. And so with that, even then, my ability to create names and stuff is terrible. I'm so bad at it. Well, to the point where in gaming I use like one character all the time. And I chuckle because we have people like Copy in the IRC who is very good at making names. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, I think most of the stuff we see her do are all based on other games and characters and that, but I know people who are very creative, and so it's interesting whenever I talk to someone, like, what was your basis for kind of character creation and the process of building the book and the story and the kind of the world you did? Did you come up with names just naturally? Is this something that as you were envisioning the storyline was going to happen, did the names just kind of come to you, or did you go out with a focus of like, all right, I need to come up with some names? And
Initially, especially all of the main characters, Cardin, Sierra, Race, Dalin, all of those ones I just kind of, they hit me. I didn't have any basis for them. But then from those characters is where I started to build off the others. That's where Kalar came up with. She had a very different name at one time. So it's kind of like I am making them up, but I'm trying to keep them within the theme of the world they're in, the country
the
they're
sound
from.
and feel of what other characters in the world would have, which is important.
Yeah,
and
it becomes difficult after a while. I'm working on book 3 now, so I'm like, crap, I need to come up with a name.
So that's an interesting piece too, because for me, this whole creative process is totally new and unique.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just mentioned as you're going through book 3.
Mm-hmm.
So this is book 1 in the series that's out now, and so with book 2, what stage is it in?
It's pretty much completed. I mean, I'll probably do another revision on it, but right now, the only thing keeping me from publishing it is I got to be able to fund the cover art. It's expensive.
Yeah, it's amazing all the little side pieces of what it comes to creating and fully getting something out there. Because it's one thing to write it, but to actually get into a physical form that is now, in someone's hands, which...
That was like the most exciting thing ever for me, because I've been writing for 20 years. Ultimate goal to become a published author, right? Finally have a physical book in my hand. I am like beyond ecstatic.
And I can only imagine.
That must be a very special feeling that I don't think many of us have actually experienced. That's pretty nice. I know after my 10-page thesis and then in my degree, I was like, this is the holy grail. Never mind a 500 or 200 or whatever piece. That must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I can't wait to get the whole series out and just... I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm very excited.
Very cool.
Good.
Well, and it's funny because, again, this being your first book being published, because you've had success with people reading some of your past stories, your short stories, things that you put out online and things like that. But for you, I know one of the things we had talked about initially was kind of because this is your first published work, and the advantages, I guess I would say today, much like for us doing this podcast, it's a lot easier to be someone who creates things in today's world with technology the way it is and how connected the internet is than it ever was in the past.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know one of the things we had discussed before is that right now the book's available online. And you can get it in print, you can get it digitally and stuff like that. But it's not a book you'd find on store shelves.
Right.
And that's really just the reality of publishing. Because unfortunately in the world we're in today where there aren't a lot of brick and mortar bookstores...
Unfortunately.
Really? I mean, it's just like any big business. If once you can start getting things delivered directly to your door, it's a bigger challenge to draw people into a physical location where you have to manage and pay rent and all these things, because the digital has allowed us so much and direct access to such. Where in order to get a book on a shelf these days, you can't be a new author, a new artist, and do something like that. You have to be known.
Yeah. You have to go through the whole rigmarole, getting an agent, getting a publisher, which I tried. I tried to go the traditional route, but there are so many authors out there, and it is such a big risk because they don't do print on demand like this. They do giant volumes. So it costs a company a lot of money to do this. So, yeah, big companies, Barnes & Noble stores like that, they're not going to put you on the bookshelf unless you got a big deal or unless you can convince them, which I'm trying to do
so
right now.
that's book 2. Right, and the re-release of book 1.
Yeah,
That
there you go.
goes on the store shelves once
Yeah,
it's gone.
that's the thing, dude. Once this kicks off on Amazon and just your sales go 50,000, that's when you just say, oh, by the way, here's my ratings, and then they'll go, yeah, we'll have you.
Yep, there you go. That's awesome.
Well, and it's funny because there is that measure of success and what it means, and we've talked about this where, everybody has their own levels of what it means to be successful with something you do. For us, I mean, we do this as a nice, fun hobby. And so the fact that we have the loyal listeners and fans that we do is wonderful. We love the people we have. We're not actively out there trying to promote ourselves to say, we need hundreds of thousands of listeners every week. However, if people do want to share our show by any means, they're more than welcome to tell their friends. But that's the thing. We're not trying to actively grow and be the same, because for us, it's just a hobby.
Right.
I know for you, this is something more where it would be a wonderful transition to be able to do something where writing became your main profession.
Yes.
But for your first published work, what is it that you basically deem as success? I mean, I know step 1 is physical book in hand, and yes, people can have this. And I mean, already around where we're at, I know a lot of people who've been picking it up just solely off of you walking around saying, "Hey guys, it's out."
Yeah, here's my card. Yeah.
And so I know that's already you've gotten some traction with that. But like for you, what is it being a newly published author to you feels like success?
I will be very happy if I can break even as far as what money I've spent on this endeavor. And I figured it out, and I can't remember the number now, how many copies I'll need to sell to do that. But
I very much hope, and I think you're going to be on track to, at minimum, do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, because having read the book, I was thoroughly impressed and enjoyed it.
Nice.
Admittedly, just because I have this terrible habit of, if I know a person, I mean, it's what we first started talking about, which made it work out, is that I will, without being asked, I will give unsolicited advice constantly. Things like, oh, you need artwork? Here's where you could do. Here's where you could go. Oh, you need to get it out there? Here's a website so you can tell.
You've been
stuff like that.
Big help for that. I have to thank you for that, dude.
Well, you're welcome. It's just that randomness where I can't stop myself. The challenge was initially is then I started reading the book, and in the first chapter I had to stop myself. I had to turn it off and say, yes, I know, John, but I need to not read this book as though because I've had a lot of people send me work they've been on to get to have critiqued.
Yeah.
Where both for language use, for the way story flow was, for resumes, you name it, where people just like, hey, you seem to be aware of things here because you checked it out. So I had to shut that off and just be like, dude, just read the book, enjoy the book. Because at the very early part I was going through it with a more critical mind of like, oh well, just tell Johnny. I was like, no, this is done, stop. But once I did that and I just started reading the book, I was really impressed. And I do really enjoy the world you created.
Yeah.
And so, in a way, it's so many ways I want to talk about it without spoiling it. Because I think everyone needs to go out there and check this out.
Please,
and pick up
please
Sword
do.
of Dragons. Yeah, exactly. As John would say, please do. I mean, easily, you can get it online right now during the show, cheaper than we do most Steam sales.
Yeah.
And so you can go pick it up on Kindle right now. But one of the things is the world you created and kind of the rules. Because for me, I like characters and I like story, but for me it's really a big deal about the rules and like kind of the physics or the laws or just the relationships of how a world works that I find so interesting in writing.
World building, yeah, it's one of the fun things to do as a writer too. Is at least for me is to. Especially starting the series out, I'm building a brand new world from the ground up. Especially this. This has no basis in anything except, I try to get some traditional fantasy elements in there and then kind of play with them and say, this is how it normally works in fantasy. I'm going to do this just to kind of make fun of it, even though I love it. I love fantasy. Don't get me wrong.
No, and I think so many of us do. I know, Ken, what are some of your kind of the fantasy that you've read, or are you as much into?
Oh, well, I would tell you, but let me just give you a better example of how much I've read in terms of fantasy in the past 10 years. I almost solely buy either fantasy books or sciencey books. Like, not science fiction, I mean like actual non-fiction books. And right now we're moving house, and my spare room, which is going to be our office, and is going to eventually have bookshelves, currently you can't see the floor because it's just books. And it's not as if there's just like one book per level. There's columns, thousands of columns. So I read a lot. I really like Orcs is one of my big ones I've been into lately. But I like a lot of fantasy books that are kind of, and I hate to say it, they are aimed at teenagers, but I really enjoy the story, which it always feels kind of almost embarrassing because you feel like you should like things that are more for your age group. But I suppose just like people who like My Little Pony, people like The Simpsons, people like Futurama, all things can be enjoyed by all ages, technically, as long as it's the following profanity and the likes. So, I love a lot of. Oh, jeez, I don't even know where to begin. I have a lot of books I enjoy. Trudy Canavan. I'm a big fan of all of her stuff. She's done The Magician's Guild, which is all like magic-y stuff. The Ambassador's Mission, High Lord, Novice. So on and so forth. I really like magic-based things. So I would very much enjoy this. And FYI, I'm buying your book right now, John.
Awesome, yeah.
So we have a nasty habit of doing that during the show.
Yeah.
Oh wait, look at this Steam sale. How did we end up with all these games? Yeah. It's amazing how you can just hit those little buy now buttons while doing things live with the internet.
So bad.
And so as you're talking about that, Ken, for me, it's a big thing about the world and the rules. I found that when reading Sword of Dragons, that the rules you came up with were similar in basis to fantasy, things that we've all kind of understood throughout a lot of the classics, but I think had enough of their own twists for how the rules worked and how you kind of went to things that it didn't instantly remind me of anything else.
Cool.
It very much felt like its own place amongst fantasy, which I think is a big challenge.
Yes.
Because, I mean, there's so many takes on the classic genres of things, and you go back to what is classically referred to all the way back to Tolkien and stuff like that, where some of the basis of what we see today as, orcs and elves and, trolls and things like that, just anything fantasy, let alone, because yours is, I would say, more currently, and now yours is a traditional fantasy, because you have different races, and you have true magic in the book and such. I say that because there's some that I consider high fantasy or low fantasy, some that are focused mostly on just kind of medieval type stories that maybe have a twist of magic. Think of Game of Thrones, where yes, there's dragons, but the majority of the book is about people,
Right.
and there aren't really any lesser races. There's more just characters, different types of humans essentially throughout, versus your Tolkien type things where you have all the different variations. Well, that's just my own definition. I think it's kind of out there. People have understood where you have high and low fantasy, where the other side of it is you have the level of fantasy where you have all the different races, the magic, the different worlds, things like that go beyond kind of a more traditional human story, which yours does, because you have true magic in the story. You do have other races essentially, or just that little hit with like the orcs and things like that, where it's not prevalent throughout, but is there. It's not just a human-based story, which is very cool. And go figure, it's got dragons, right? So, other than your thing for dragons, when you were creating the world of Sword of Dragons, what were some of the kind of key influences you had from other things that you've either written in the past or authors, things like that you can refer to? Because, like I said, the difference here where there's been criticism of other authors who've written some big books, things that I've enjoyed, like the... I want to say Eye of the Dragon. I forget which series it is now. It's on my shelf there. But some of these ones I've heard that you can almost... It's not just that you see the reference, but you almost feel very close ties to things like Tolkien or to the whole Wheel of Time series, things like that, where you kind of catch characters that almost feel the same, or instances that happen where you're like, well, that's much like this story. I didn't get that sense of deja vu from your book, which is impressive to me, because again, anytime that you can write something that truly feels like its own story in
unique,
in a very saturated kind of fantasy world, I think that's impressive, and so I liked that you did that. But were there any specific influences that you have in particular that you kind of based your world on or started your thought process?
I'm a big gamer, so all the different fantasy video games I've played, the movies, sci-fi fantasy that I've watched, I can say that Cardin, Sierra, and Race, those three characters, three protagonists, if you will, I had initially started their character arcs out as kind of thinking them like my version of Kirk, McCoy, Spock.
Interesting.
Yeah, it didn't stay, but that's where I started with them, and then it just kind of mutated into their own unique relationship, and believe me, it's going to go in some interesting directions in the next books too. But
see, that's funny to me, because I don't think I would have ever have guessed those as initial thoughts behind the character. I mean, even after reading it, I don't think I ever would have caught those characters as a basis. So that's interesting to me. I can only imagine the iterations it went through to come up to where the characters are today.
Oh yeah,
because I do not feel that.
Oh yeah, writing style too. Like I've been working on my own writing style, but I really like works like, and you were talking earlier about young adult fantasy and stuff like that. I really was impressed by J.K. Rowling's writing style. I mean, her books are great, the story is great, but the first time I picked up book 1 of Harry Potter, I'm like, reading through this, I'm like, this was her first novel. This is incredible. It's easy and fun to read. It's not written, as we were talking about, she didn't dumb it down for the audience, even though it was written for kids.
I think it was written for the age group. Well, just speaking personally, because when the first book came out, I think I was 12 or 11, and I remember my mum read it to me at the time, and I loved it. And as I grew, the books came out at the same. I was effectively the same age as Harry, Ron, Hermione, and the rest. As they grew up, the books kind of met with my age. So I always felt that the maturity level was on the level of you were a kid, but by the end you're an adult when the last book came out. So I always felt like the you're right that it was the first book was written so that anybody can enjoy it. Because there's a reason my mum read it to me, because at that time she loved reading it. Right, like it wasn't just me; she was thoroughly enjoying the book, and it just went on throughout. So. Sorry to bow in here as well, but I also wanted to mention, speaking of Harry Potter, we're talking about names that people pronounce incorrectly.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-oh.
Hermione.
Yep, Hermione.
You say incorrectly, differently.
Well, and I
Well-
liked she did that in, what was it, book 4, where she actually did this clever thing in the story where Hermione spells it out for that guy that she had a crush on in the Triwizard Tournament.
Oh, yeah.
And I read somewhere that's J.K. Rowling put that in there specifically because people were asking, how do you pronounce her name? So there you go. She was quite clever.
Smart way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's funny because because I'd say I'd probably say Hermione a lot of times or something like that when I first did before I learned it, or however when someone first mentioned it. Oh, shush, you Scottish.
So you're saying you pronounced it wrong?
Nah, I just pronounce it all American-like.
America.
No, America. It's the right way. Anyhow, but no, that's right. There's a thing there about pronunciation. Although it's silly until you actually go to either read it to someone or have a discussion with someone about specifics and characters and things. And I've run it multiple times because even talking to one of the people at work I know who also has read it, Chloe, who just killed it. Right? She got it, and I think she
Like
finished
3
it.
days, yeah.
I was just like, what? You're making me look bad, Chloe. Damn it. But in doing so, we started talking, and the pronunciations were a little different. So it took a minute where I had to say, like, all right, wait, which character? Yeah, that happens. But regardless, so so I would question it and say, what came up with your methodology for the way magic works? Because one of the big things that's different in this book, come up a lot that I've seen, other than having your kind of classes of magicians, you have your magicians and your wizards and kind of other magic that's out there. But initially is that as you tell the story, your magic is based around or is enhanced by and focused by the tools or weapons that the mages use. That's kind of like one of the focuses that I saw, because your magicians aren't, your mages at least, aren't just casting random spells left and right.
Right.
They tend to, especially when they're doing things offensively, focus it into essentially their weapon and project from the weapon.
Right.
So what kind of came up with some of your rules to the magic world?
Well, my idea was the initial creation of magic in this world was the wizards, and they got powerful, and then they started shunning and being selective who they take in their guilds. So then the mages, or these people who had nowhere to learn magic but still had some ability, became the mages, where they weren't pure casters. They needed to learn melee weapons as well, too. So my thought was that because they're not as powerful and not as focused as wizards are, they need something to help them out. And since their primary role is offensive and defensive for their respective kingdom, have it through their weapons. And even their armor plays a little bit of a role for when they put up their shields and such, their magic shields.
So, but it's essentially enhanced by the items that they use and wear and things like that.
Right. They could cast it without it. They just wouldn't be very effective.
Gotcha. So, and that's one of the things I also saw in the world is that from everything you read about it, other than the protagonist, essentially, everyone that I read that I could think of that was a caster, that was a magician of some sort, seemed to be attached to the Warriors Guild.
Yes.
And is that true, or did I miss something there?
The majority is. It's very rare that, and that kind of plays into
into the
future
main story,
stories,
right,
but,
but
there are a few that aren't. The idea behind that is the Warriors Guild is almost this omnipresent. Oh, you're useful to us. We're taking you. And they do this at a young age. I make them sound like they're evil. They're not. I don't want to spoil too much.
I would say that I don't think it comes out as they're evil. I think you specifically mentioned in the storyline what the opinion of what's happened within the guild, and that there are some specific players that perhaps take things a bit more or less than others.
Right.
But I wouldn't say that they're necessarily evil. It's just kind of they have their take on things, and just depending on where you lie on the grand scheme of things, you may see them as one way or another.
Right.
But no, I wouldn't say evil. I would agree. It's kind of like its own thing.
And as you see at the very, very beginning of the story, if you have this talent and you've trained for this talent and you're not in the guild, there's not much better way to make a living. The guild has the resources to pay you, and you make a good living off of it. So if you're not in them, you're kind of almost a second-class citizen for your role.
Jeez.
What's that? Or what are your thoughts, Ken? Or what questions do you have for John about not having read it yet, but just kind of what you're getting into?
Sure, that gives an interesting perspective, right? I can ask questions that without no
spoilers.
I can't spoil. It's great. So I find it really interesting the fact that the mages can cast with their hands, but it's not as powerful. So they sort of, I guess, their weapons or their staffs or wherever they are can actually sort of like they're kind of like wands in the Harry Potter universe as well. I hate to draw parallels that way, but wizards can cast spells without the use of a wand, but it's much more powerful if they're sort of I don't know, use it as like a.
That's true.
Sort of, a device that sort of centers the power and pushes it through that, and I think that's cool. So I do enjoy that. I don't know why, it's something about seeing wizards in these universes not using their staff, but using the spells for little things, just with their hands. That is just, that I enjoy that so much. It is one of the coolest things. So if you could add that into like the third book, I'd probably buy the whole series. Just FYI.
Something about how someone who's infused with magic just uses it in their everyday life.
Because it's like it means they're so powerful that they can do little things like that. That implies a lot.
Well,
you know?
Without spoiling, I'll say, well, the primary mages perhaps do not, because of how limited their magic is. The more traditional wizards, who are grown up imbued with magic, different. And so
okay, I'm looking forward to it. I've decided to buy the e-copy because being in the UK is a little bit more difficult to get over here, so the e-copy might suit me better, so I'm going to read it on my Mac.
Cool. It should eventually be available in UK stores for Amazon. It's
cool. Yeah,
however that works. Yes.
They said up to 6 weeks it'll take, and the book's only been out for a few weeks. So
I've got a .com account, and that's why it's being picky, because I've got both a .co.uk and a .com account. So, but anyway, the other thing I wanted to bring up now is something. So my wife's always wanted to be a writer one day. That's been one of her dreams. She wants to one day become a writer. I think it's more along the side of romantic stuff, though. But she said to me,
the other kind of fanfic.
Yeah, it's not fanfic. She wants to do her own sort of thing. But yes, that sort of level, anyway, I'm pretty sure. But she's always said to me she just wants to sit down and start writing her book. And I keep saying to her, now, I am completely inexperienced when I say this, so basically what I'm asking is, tell me if I'm wrong here. What I've always said to her as a new writer is, sit down and plan it first. Whenever I do any writing in my professional or non-professional life, I've always been told, plan it. And I've always imagined when you're writing books that are complex over multiple books, you have multiple characters, you have multiple personalities, and multiple possible plot holes, what you do is you effectively get a massive graph that points, FYI, page 17, this happens, and they call him this, and this is this person's history. So in page 242, make sure you don't do the opposite and say that he came from elsewhere, right? So I just said to her, make sure you like thoroughly plan. I think it's almost I'm a coder, you see. So what I said is you always write pseudocode first in code, right? You don't write out the actual code. You write out like the workings behind it in English language before you translate it, so that you can get the workings correct. And I personally imagine it would be the same way when you write a full-length, intricate, complex novel, or even a trilogy, or even more. You say, I have to make sure that there's no plot holes by making one person have this background and then change it suddenly later on, etc. So,
go ahead.
Am I wrong? Am I right? Am I being silly? Am I being?
I think you're absolutely right. When I first started out, I made the mistake of not planning things out, and even in my fanfic series, I had someone recently. I mean, the series ended a long time ago, and they recently
put to bed.
They recently sent me an email saying, "Hey, did you know that this plot hole was here?" And I'm like, "Oh boy." That's because I initially didn't plan it out. Towards the end of the series, I started getting into planning out the final 2 or 3 seasons. Like I said, that series was for me to learn how to be a better writer. I think planning is key, and I have what I call pre-production stage of every book now, to where I plan out the book, what's going to happen, and then end the planning stage with a chapter-by-chapter outline. How much or how little you plan it out is, I think, going to be unique to each author. But I think if you don't do that, you'll end up regretting it.
They say you'll end up in some weird places your characters take you.
Yeah.
So, because in the same vein, one of the things I'm very curious about with writing, because I've talked to some people that, and I haven't written myself really. Again, I had told you my challenge with creation, but I have kind of thought about the process a lot, and I've read certain little things here and there. But equally, where it's kind of planning on the overall structure of the book and the plot line and story that you're going for, what I've heard, what I think, is it's almost equally important to kind of really flesh out at least your main characters before you really start putting them into the situations it'll be. And the reason for that I've always kind of figured out is, from listening to a lot of other writers, is that if you fully define your character, who they are, their motivations, their past, where they came from, even if you don't do it in a story sense, like you don't want to write their entire backstory into the book you're putting out there.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you fully flesh out those characters, when you find yourself writing and you start getting into the specifics of dialogue or how they may react in a specific situation, it's easier to deal with that because you already have figured out who this character is. That you're basically just tie into the motivations you gave them at the beginning. So it's not so much that you're trying to say, how do I figure out how to do this, this, and this? It's more, here's the situation my characters are in.
How are they going?
How would they naturally react to this situation? Because these are what these characters are. Is that kind of your experience, or what?
The more you develop a character, the more they'll start to almost write themselves. And I found that especially with this. I finished book 1. When I was writing book 2, I had all this background that I'd come up with for book 1, plus what happened in book 1. And I get to the situation, I'm like, how the heck am I going to get him out? Oh, he would do this. Okay, yeah. So it works that way. I would even give advice to have a writer write a couple of short stories of that character to develop them out before you put them in the book.
Well, and I think that's kind of what happened with some of the famous ones, right? With Tolkien and stuff, with the
Silmarillion?
Yes. As well as other stories, is that was like all of the context behind the main story that was put together to help define and explain what that story was going to be. And it was never really intended to be its own work or to be a book.
Right.
It just was so much that they said, yeah, we can probably publish this as well.
Yeah.
And so I've heard that a lot of times. So it's a great reinforcement to hear that for those of our audience who are thinking about creating their own things, who maybe write a bit themselves. But I mean, this even applies to gaming and such when you get into playing games and kind of the traditional tabletop. I always found the best adventures that I played was when people really built that character that they were playing, and they didn't play so much in the sense of like, well, I want to be the hero and I want to do this, so I'm just going to make this happen. They honestly built a character that had flaws, had good, had bad, and ran with it. And so when situations came out with it's like, well, I'm Kronk. What do? I run forward at everything, and so that's how this situation starts. It may end poorly for me, but that's how my character would react to this situation. Things like that. And so I think that kind of ability to really flesh out a backstory is a big deal, and helps with the whole creative process.
Yeah, I agree.
So another piece of it I would talk about is when you're basically envisioning the characters, the world, everything that you're putting down on paper. How much actual visualization goes into that? Because for me, when I read a book, I often essentially have kind of an abstract view of everything in the book. Like, I don't necessarily specifically think of a way a character looks and sounds and acts, like to a degree of like they're a real person. They just kind of stay as this somewhat abstract thing in my head throughout. Every once in a while, the worlds themselves come a little more real because I may base something I'm reading about on something I've seen, but less so personally that I do that with characters. So my question is, when you are developing this, when you started building your characters, did you really see the world itself like vividly and the characters like faces, and did you think of voices for them, or did it also kind of live in that still up in the head kind of imaginary side of things?
It varied, but I'd say for the main characters, I had very specific visions. Card and Zero Race, especially, I had very specific visions in my head for them, and I think that came out on paper okay. And some of the locations I did, like the first city, Arcanon, I always knew what that was going to look like. Some of it was very visual. I drew out a map. I really was bad at it, but I drew out a map about 15 years ago when I first started developing these stories so long ago. and I've used that map as a reference to allow consistency, and so somewhat, yeah. I mean, there are other parts that are a little more nebulous, but that I like doing that because it gives me a chance to where if I get to a part of a book where it focuses on that, then I can develop it and I get to explore it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So we actually do have questions coming in, this one in the form of email to the show.
Sweet.
From our welcome back Pusa. And she questions in here, says, so first, subject, longing for your voice, watching you on cam. Thank you, Pusa. Her questions come in. Bam. And trying to get the video to come back to life.
He's trying to get back together. Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll put on a song in the meantime. We'll hand over in a second. All right, we'll be.
So I'm ready to bring it back whenever you're ready to give it to me.
Okay, he's ready. He said, "Whenever you're ready to give it to me," and I want to make a joke, but none of you heard it, so I can't make a joke. Okay, here we go. Handing over in a moment. You're listening to ShowX on VisitorRussians.com. Be back in about 15 seconds or so. Hold on, we'll be back.
I'll be
Promise.
Just 1 sec.
And give me your video when you can.
3, 2, 1, go. Leaving Sam open this time.
Appreciate it. Hey, look at that. Life again.
Yay.
Yes. Having the internet continuously drop out on me while trying to do a show, not the best thing ever. This is creating me so much post, I'm not even kidding. So I'm not going to recover Alpha Geek Radio at this point. I'm going to let it stay in its state so I don't have to worry about trying to break it again. But I am going to continue this. So we were just getting into the questions that we were talking about from Pusa. We'd gotten through the first, I think, about the character.
Yes,
initially part about utterly made up. And you say that generally they tend to be made up. So the next piece of it that we had was, do you imagine their voices? And that kind of leads to what I was talking about with the, do you picture the world?
Only some of them, like I was saying. Same thing with, I hear Lawrence Fishburne's with the King's voice. And I kind of have a voice for the main characters. It's almost an internal voice, but nothing specific. Like, it might be beneficial for me to start doing that, though. Thinking of actors and actresses. Oh. Yeah. Who? Katie Sackhoff or Sarah?
Could you imagine that, say, 2 years down the line, you get a knock on your door, and it's a producer from HBO, and they say to you, "We would like to offer you a show based entirely on your novels. We think they're amazing, so on and so forth." Would you do that? Would you consider? How would you do that? Like, could you imagine being asked to find actors and actresses and actually getting voices and faces behind your characters? How would you think you'd envisage interviewing these people? Do you think it'd be an easy or a really difficult process?
Oh man! First, I would love for something like that to happen because it would be so cool to see this world on screen, some sort of screen, TV, movie, anything like that. That would just be incredible. Video game. Ultimately, I would love to see a video game based on my world.
It's funny because I did imagine a little bit of the video game side of things when I was reading through some of it. Like,
Yeah. So I would definitely do it. As far as looking for the talent, I don't know how much they would let me be involved with that, but if I could, I think it'd be fun. It'd be hard, but it'd be fun.
Or do you just sell all the rights, take the money, and run? Just the only stipulation in there, it can't be done by Shamalama Ding Dong.
Oh, I'm not Shyamalan.
Yeah. Only stipulation. Anyone else can make it, just not...
Him and Yui Bowl.
Yeah, oh god.
No, Yui Bowl.
Oh god, no. Yes, all the terrible producers out in the world.
Yeah, but it'd be fun. No, I think it'd be fun. I would love to be somewhat involved in it, just because I'm curious about that creative process, and I've written screenplays before. I've taken classes for writing screenplays. I think it'd be fun.
Very cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That could be cool. Yeah. Well, here's hoping, sir, because that would be very interesting. I know I would be interested in the game from what I've heard of this so far. I know I've not read the book yet. I have now bought it.
But it is coming.
I will indeed.
And
cool.
Ken, thank you very much for your video. The other questions we have in there, or the last piece that Pusa puts in there says, when I write my silly little things, I sometimes get up and walk around, acting out monologues or minor scenes from the character's view. Do you do the same? Getting really into the character to a point where you prance around like a demented peacock?
I haven't done that yet, but it sounds like fun. They have conversations in my head, and I've thought about putting like mock interviews with my characters up on my blog. I think that'd be kind of cool, but I haven't done anything like that yet. It's just in my head. I do imagine conversations with them sometimes though, and they hate me because they're like, "You're making my life miserable." Sorry.
Yes, the whole breaking the wall thing where you actually are interacting with the characters as though they're actually you. That's funny. So okay, before the internets fail us again, because I have a feeling that they will, I want to make sure we pimp out all of your things.
Cool.
And so, for anyone interested in learning more about Jon Wasik, the author, and the book Sword of Dragons, where should they go to find these things? I have in the show notes about the places where they can go buy the book. But where can they learn more about you, Jon?
Well, I have a blog that I try to keep at least updated once a week. It's Katar.wordpress.com, and that's how you pronounce Cardin's last name, Katar.wordpress.com. That's where I've been talking a lot about my progress on the books as well as other random nerd stuff. I still got to put Denver Comic Con in there. That was fun.
Nice.
I also have a website that right now is just like a front page for the book sale, but I intend to put way more about the story and the characters. And even, you mentioned Chloe, she's volunteered to draw a map of the world for me, a better version than the one I did. I want to put that up on the website too. So that's theswordofdragons.com.
Very nice. So everyone can make sure they check out theswordofdragons.com.
And I also have an author's page on Facebook, so that's just author Jon Wasik, facebook.com, author Jon Wasik.
Nice.
JONWASIK.
So everyone, those are where you can learn more about Jon. And so, and as well as before we lose interwebs again, we've touched just briefly, because we didn't have time to go into depth, about your geek, about your own levels of geek beyond just the author side of things. So now that we've covered a lot of the book and hopefully have driven the interest for everyone out there to go buy this, is to say, what are some of the kind of games you play? What's your focus with that? Some of the stuff you really enjoy, because you did mention gaming, and we love talking gaming.
Oh, yeah. RPGs are my favorite. I mean, I like other things like first-person shooters, but my all-time favorite game, you and I talked about this before, is Final Fantasy VII. I just love that game. I don't get to play as often as I used to these days, but I still play Skyrim, Left 4 Dead 2. There's a real-time strategy that I love to play called Sins of a Solar Empire. It's a space-based one. Yeah, I love that one, especially some of the mods they have for it. Modding is where it's at.
You are definitely amongst our people. I will go off to length about mods in general and how I've consistently broken my Skyrim. Because I decided to mod it to a level that is unplayable.
Yeah, been there, done that.
And Ken and I are both, I think, on the same level where we truly believe that mods are what separates the PC master race from pretty much everything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
So beyond that, you mentioned Denver Comic Con. We have a couple minutes left. What were your initial impressions of this year's Denver Comic Con? Because I wasn't there since I was doing amazing things at Anime North.
It was cool. I only got to go on Sunday, unfortunately, but it was still really, really neat. Lots of cool cosplays this year, and I got to cosplay finally this year. I was Clark Kent from Smallville Season 10 when he had that red jacket on.
Hey, when Smallville actually got good, like towards the later seasons, very nice.
Yeah. And my girlfriend was Tariel from the Hobbit movies. I know she wasn't in the books. She got some hate from that, but but she was gorgeous as Toriel.
There are worse things to have than lovely ladies who like to cosplay.
Oh yeah. And it was really neat. I didn't see any of the panels, but we just walked around the show floor a lot, and really great. Who was it? One of the big Star Wars authors was there. It wasn't Stackpole, was it? I saw him. I didn't get to talk to him, but one of the big Star Wars authors was there. That was really neat. Kevin J. Anderson. Yeah, that's who it was, I think.
Ah, nice.
So that was really cool.
Well, and your general impression, I mean, because I heard the numbers on this one reached over 101,000 people attended the con.
I believe it. It was crowded. It was very, very crowded.
Jeez.
It's a big one. It's gotten to a point where it's almost ridiculously so, which hopefully means they'll be able to continue to open up how much of the convention center they use here so that they keep maintaining it. Because I have a lot of friends who went, and there's a lot of great photos out there, and it did look like a great time, so I'm jealous in that sense. And even though Ken and I, we didn't get into it much this week about what we've been up to, I had posted on my social media where I was like, I was this close last night to purchasing another flight to Scotland because of MCM, which is happening at the end of September. And I was just like, I could totally go to their Comic-Con there. It's like, but I have other things to pay for still.
Sir, I can
Darn
assure
it.
you the Comic-Cons here are nothing like the Comic-Cons in the US. Your thousands turn into hundreds. They're
Hey.
still growing. They're better each year, but they're growing, that's for sure.
I understand the different levels of expectation. I do, Ken. It's just the level of like I really do enjoy foreign cons. I had an amazing time in Anime North, so I want to continue to expand and want to eventually hit Japan.
You ever get a chance, go to Gallifrey 1, the Doctor Who convention in Los
geez.
Angeles. That was awesome. I went earlier this year.
I can only imagine. I don't know if I'm a Whovian to the level that would allow me to. I do appreciate it and do love me some Whovian stuff. Doctor Who, but that would be much. All right, so before we're done here, Ken, it's your turn to let us all out because it's the end of the show for us, unfortunately, through all the broken mess that Comcast caused us today. So could you please give us all the shout-outs and things like that? And everybody definitely look in the show notes this week for any of the links and things we've talked about on the show today. So Ken, please.
Sure thing. First of all, thanks very much to John for joining us today. It's been a lot of fun having you. We really do apologize for the technical difficulties, but for once they're actually out of our hands and we can't actually take blame, which is nice. So there's that. Let's find us on Twitter. Go to twitter.com/VTWShowX, twitter.com/GoHex, and twitter.com/DocDead to find the show, myself, and Mr. Wayne on Twitter. And John, do you have a Twitter, by the way? I'm sorry, I didn't actually ask.
Not. I should get that.
You should get
don't.
that. Well, I will happily follow you if you get that. Check us out on Twitter. I just said that. Facebook. Go to facebook.com and type in ShowX and you'll find us there. Send us emails, showx@videoproductions.com, and you can send us emails about your geek cred for the week. We always do enjoy that. Patreon.com/ShowX. Give us your pennies. We do appreciate every little bit of help to help, for example, improve internets, move away from Comcast, perhaps, improve our equipment, and keep the show running each month and each week. We want to thank everybody for listening in this week and to listening to all the shows on VTWRussians.com. We really, really do appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining us today, John. We do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, and with that, you've been listening to ShowX on VTWProductions.com, at least what bits we were able to keep together and duct taped and stuff like that. So we will see you again next week, and go figure, 200 shows, and it's the 200th that decides to blow up on us yet again. So we'll catch you again next week, although I don't know if I will be here because Concourse to Elegance, but Ken and I will talk about that. Check us out right after the show now as we go into the TeamSpeak channel for our gaming night and a general hangout for those who don't want to game. So thank you all, and catch out all the shows on VTWProductions.com. We'll catch you guys again next time. Have fun!
Peace.
Goodbye. See you next zombie.